Thanks for dropping by. I'm eating chocolate at the moment. We're going to have a look at doing coding and putting some controls in the inspector. Oh, you can hear me screwing the paper up on my chocolate. You could very, very easily. This is a 2-pop countdown, so just countdowns from 5 what it needs to render. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and if you make this longer, then it changes the timer. If we come into Fusion, and we've got the node here. So let's say we go into this countdown node here, right click, click edit control. This brings up the panel where you can add a control, and you can add any control in here. Slider, screw control, range control, checkbox, buttons, combo, multi-controls, label controls, color controls, color wheels. So you've got lots and lots of options in here to add controls inside the inspector. But we're going to do it in the code. In 17.2 onwards, there's probably no need to do this. There would be a few exceptions to tweak the code afterwards. So you could enter a new control using the edit controls. You could build your macro, and then afterwards you could tweak it if you want, just to tidy it up. Or if you were given a macro that somebody else made and there's a control missing in the inspector that you want, rather than redo the macro or undo the macro, you can do it in the code. From the Fusion page, I can actually right click. If I go templates, edit, titles, you'll notice there's two pop countdown, and there's one here that's got the thumbnail. If I right click and open this one, this is inside a DRFX file, so it doesn't work. What you have to do is edit it outside that file, so it's here. So if I double click it and open it in VSCode, it opens here. What I'm going to do is come to view, edit layout, split right, and that means I've got the code on both the left and the right. So everything under inputs ordered is in the inspector, and everything down here where it says tools is in the nodes. So I just need to know what's in the nodes. I'm going to be working in this countdown node. You'll also notice inside this text plus node I've got an expression. I'm going to add my controls here. If I scroll down a little bit, you'll see there we've got a script button, which is the buy me a coffee link. So if I come up here, come in here, we've got buy me a coffee at the top. So all we've got in here is buy me a coffee, font controls, color and size. Go in the inspector here and have a look in the inputs ordered. This is the buy me a coffee button, and where it says script button, just going to match up with what's here, script button. So I use labels as label 1, label 2, etc. if I'm putting labels in, but if I'm putting control in, I'll just give it a name. And then here's your inputs. So font, style, colors for red, green, blue, alpha, and then size. I'm now going to go and come down to this cog in the left hand corner and go user snippets. I'm going to open the lua.json file. So this is the snippets that we did in the last video, and I just did the first 2 in the last video, but there's lots in here now. I've put all the controls that I know so far. There'll be some controls and some things I haven't done yet. We could do fuses, we could do script. Really focusing on the inspector at the moment. I'm going to add this notes. The majority of controls comes in 2 sections. You've got the code that goes in the node, which is the tool, and then you put in a label so you can see it in the inspector. So there's always 2 parts to it. There is an exception for those people that are screaming at the screens now. You can do all this inside DaVinci Resolve. So down here under the last view info, you'll have loads of user controls, and they will appear in the inspector in the order that they appear here. And the reason I do it this way is because I can move the controls. So if you do it all inside the edit controls page, inside the DaVinci Resolve without touching code, it's really difficult. It is possible, but it's really difficult to move the controls around. So let me show you how easy it is here. At the moment, I've got buy me a coffee button at the top. If I come here, this is the button. If I go Control and X and cut it, come down to here and paste it here and save it. Go back into Resolve. I need to bring another one of these in. It's now at the bottom. So easy just to move them around. So you can move any control in the inspector anywhere you want, put it in any page you want, under any label you want, and it's so easy. If you're trying to do it within DaVinci Resolve, it's really clunky, unless there's something I'm missing, in which case, send your answers on a postcard. So we're going to add some controls in here. We're going to go from the snippets that I've made. So if I look at the snippets, I've actually got a snippet here, which is a note all it is really, it's a bit like a comment box, but you could use this to give people information. So I'm now putting shading into macros, and I'm using this box to explain what the shading is. So here I want to put just here a node label, not a node note here. So I'm going to use NN is my keyboard shortcut, press tab, and it drops this code in. Now this code is here. This just has to match the label that we're going to put in the top. And then it's a text edit control, so it's just a style text. IC control page 0. This is the control page, is at the top of the inspector. You've got here, it says controls and settings. We can make our own pages. That's really easy to do. But from the Fusion standalone, controls is also 0. If you do a control page of 0, it will go under controls. But in DaVinci Resolve, you can also use the word here. You'll see controls. We've then got the link name. That's what the end user sees in the inspector. Read only, true. So the end user can't change this text. 2 lines high, and the default text is basically, this is just default text. You type in here your instructions or your notes to the end user. We'll then come into the top of the inspector. So anything under inputs ordered is the inspector, and I'm going to put NOL is my shortcut, NOL, this code here. However, the source operator is always the name of the node. This control information's in this code here. So if I scroll up, the name of this node is countdown, not text 1. Normally I put everything in text 1, so I need to change that, and I think it should be okay. We'll bring this in, and at the top of the inspector we've got that little note. We can't type over that. I've got no control. If I'm backspacing, nothing happens, and that's because it's set to read only. So you could put information in there to the end user. If you wanted to move it, all you do is move this label. You don't need to move the code, so we're going to cut that. We're going to come down here, paste it in. Need to replace it because it's in memory, and now it's at the bottom, so easy to move around. Next up, it's going to go there, and let's do this next one, which is a range control. And a range control, instead of having something go from 0 to 1, you can actually control where it goes, and you've got all the parameters in here. So I've now added in range control. We've got a minimum of the range control and a maximum of the range control. It's a number, it's an integer, it's called a range control. This is the kind of control it is. The control page is 0, so it's going to go into the controls page in the inspector. Now this is important, control group 1, and then down here control group 1. What that does is link this control and this control together, because they're actually 2 separate controls, but they're linked. Control ID is, this is the first part, control ID, this is the second part, but it starts at 0 because it's Lua. And then we've got the name is what the end user sees, and then there's also a middle name, and then down here we've got another name. You'll see it in a minute in the inspector. And then you've got the scale in, so the minimum can go from minus 0.5 to 1.5. So can this. We've got outer length and higher outer length. Not exactly sure what that is, but I think it's the line you're going to see on the control. So we've added the range control into the node. We now need to add the range label into the inspector. I'm going to have it at the bottom, so I'm just going to tab down, range label, enter. The source operator is important because that is countdown. So the source operator has to be the name of the node that you've put the control in. If I scroll across this and I see it in the window, I know the code's correct. If it's media offline, I've made a mistake, and the mistake could be as little as a comma. So here we go. We've got at least between, so we can change these controls here. Now you'd have to connect them to something. So what we'd do is we'd have, let's say size. So we'd put an expression on the size and connect it to this, and then this controls the size. But at the moment, I'm just showing you putting controls in the inspector. You can connect them with a pip whip or an expression, but we're not doing that bit yet. Back into the code, we've got the range control there. I'm going to come down here. Next thing in here, so we've got range. I've got some checkboxes here. So I've got a 3-row checkbox, which the code's CR for the code. So this is CR, is just a keyboard shortcut. If you've watched the other two videos, you'll see how I've made the snippets, and these are on the left hand column are just the snippets, and here is the actual code. Things that are changed in here are a little different. ICD width you've not seen before is 0.3. That's the size, and think of it as a percentage. So there's three of them, so it's 30%, 30%, 30%. There is also a line where you can stretch to fit in the inspector. I don't know if it works in every tool, but it works in buttons. We've added the tool. It's in three parts, so it's actually three controls. It's checkbox 1, checkbox 2, checkbox 3, and because of the width, it will put them next to each other, so they will look like they are one control. And then the checkbox row, I need to use, and the source operator again, need to make sure that's the right node name. Save that out, see what happens. That back in, and now nothing. What have we done there then? Code's right because that's working. So what we got that's wrong? Checkbox number, that's the wrong thing there. So where it says number, I've done the checkbox 1, 1. So I'll update that, make sure it works. Okay, so that's the first checkbox there. Underneath here, and source operator was. Now you'll notice they're a bit squished up in here, and that's because you can't change this inspector. But if you go into Fusion, the inspector in Fusion is got a little bit of give, and it depends on your monitor size. Back in the code, and we go and add another one. There's our three checkboxes. Now in here, there's not enough room for the writing really. We come back into here. If I change that to 0.1. I've not done this before, but I'm just going to make this 0.1 because I've seen this with buttons. No, can you see how they're dead thin? So let's do 0.5. So we're changing the width of this box, but there's nothing written next to it. So what's written next to it is here where it says checkbox. So the link underscore name is what the end user sees. So if I remove the word checkbox, if you hold down the Alt key, you can do multiple selections. I'm going to make that 33%. And now you've got checkbox 1, 2, and 3. What you might need to do then is use a note above it to let the end user know what they are. Or you could use something else, a drop down, which is called a combo box. That's that control in. Let's have a look at the next control. Coming down here, we've got, so these are buttons. Normally we make one button, which is the Buy Me a Coffee page. So Buy Me a Coffee code is here, which is one button. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to add a chunk of buttons in. So it's actually 4 buttons, but button 1 is the width. So if you look at the code, in fact, I'll drop the code in here first. That's probably going to be easier. So BT for button. This is the code going in the node for buttons. It's number and it's a multi-button control. However, inside DaVinci Resolve, if you do a multi-button control, you will get a combo box. What's important is where it says force buttons true, makes them buttons. Stretch to fit, I've changed to false because I don't want them trying to take over the inspector. I want to control them. And what I'm doing is saying that all these buttons are going to be 10% basically. And then anything below it takes this size. So if you can see the syntax here, this is the button and it's going to have a 0 in the middle of it. This is the size of that button and it's inside the curly braces. If we don't add any sizes underneath, they're all this size. And we'll come back in a minute and we'll change the size of one of these buttons. Also here is, I don't understand what external is, but you need it. But this passive is whether it's got a keyframe or not. So whether it's got that little diamond. We want to put the buttons label into the inspectors. So the BTL I've got to remember. Let's come down here. Next one, BTL tab. Source operator is important. It has to be the correct node. Save it out. 1, 2, 3 buttons there. Now if we come back to here, if I grab this button width here, I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to come here and I'm going to paste it. But I'm going to change the size which is 33%. And I've not done this before, so I don't know the outcome. I don't know what it's going to be. But can you see that size of the buttons got bigger? So we can control the size of these buttons. If I change, where are we? Stretch to fit through, save it. Now, these aren't one anymore, but it's fitting in the inspector. So with that, I probably have stretched to fit. So 1, 2, 3. I don't know why it'd be bigger for some reason, but you could have a name in there, couldn't you? So that's buttons. You can have words in here. So you just, that's what's inside. Inside this quotation mark is what's written inside the button. Let's go and have a look at the next one. So come down, label slider. Oh, here we go. Beautiful label, beautiful slider. So in here, come down here and we'll have some BS. And we've got a beautiful slider. What page are we going to have it in? Well, we're going to have it in 0. Slider, just what the user sees. Then you've got the parameters here. The label is LS. So I'm going to come down here to LS tab. Node name. And there we go. We've got a slider. And we've got the range of the sliders here. So again, all these controls can be made in the edit controls page. I'm not showing you anything special, but what you can do is if somebody sends you a macro that's finished and you think, I want to change the inspector, you don't have to redo the macro if you don't want to. Back into here, we've now got, mix slider, MXS. So let's come down here, MX. Global 1, don't understand. Okay, so MS in here. What's the node name? The node it's in is countdown. Everything else seems okay. Let's go and have a look what we made. That in. And nothing I can see. Global 01. Mix slider. Okay, that's what the problem is. So this here must be, I must have made something else the same. There's the mix slider start and end. So what was the problem there was it was the control here in the node was called global 1, but the label was called mix slider and they have to be the same. So that's why that error happened. Next one, we've got a tri-state checkbox. Again, everything's available inside the edit control. So CB for checkbox. The source, not going to do anything. Page 0. And this is going to be true. And then in the label, we're not going to get this because we didn't change the source. So the instance, copy that. Like that. It might not work because it's got a gap in it. No, I've got a media offline, so I've got a problem here. I've got a name clash or something like that. Back in here. Right, so I think it's because we've got gap there. I don't think you can have gaps in names. But it's not coming in spectral. This bit's wrong. Oh, there we go. That's why that bit. So with sources, etc., you can't have gaps in what you're making. And there is my checkbox. There we go. So you can't have gaps inside an instance input name or a source name. Let's have a look at the next one. Custom data. Custom data is if you are making a macro and you're going to use what's the F1 key as help. In a lot of pieces of software, the F1 key is a help key, and it's the same with DaVinci Resolve. So custom data is not working in 17.2. Now user controls is to change up a style text box, and somewhere here, there we go. So you got style text input. If I put this style text here, it says user control, so I need to get rid of the user control if I'm adding it here. This would give me control just over the style text box. So this is how I can modify the style text box, both of them. And then we've got the buy me a coffee button. And then this is user controls. It's just literally this bit here. So if it's not in, I just press UC, whack, and then I put all my controls in. So there's the controls I got so far, and this is what we've added into the inspector. And that's just through the code. However, like I said, if you come into here and you just use edit controls, you can build every single control and more. We didn't look at combo boxes. So this is a drop-down box with options in. We didn't look at them in the code. But what you can do is you can use edit controls, add loads of controls in here, and then you can make a snippet from that code. So in the future, if somebody sends you an old macro or something like that, you can then mix it up. So I hope that just gives you an idea of what you can do in the code. But from version 16, really, you've been able to use edit controls effectively to add a lot of controls. They've been in there since 15. And they were in the Fusion standalone as a plugin before that. It feels like a really rubbish video, so I do apologize, but I just wanted to show you what happens with the snippets when you drop them in the inspector. Thanks for taking the time out watching this video, and enjoy the rest of your day.